Shares coming into town tonight, you know. And so we're going to counter today with a person who got the Victoria's Secret 60th, one of 25 sexiest weathermen in the country back in 1996. So we've got Jym Ganahl here today to counter share. And of course, the third thing is Jym had to bring some rain with him. So he got into the weather business at the age of 12 in Iowa. He was headed to the TV weathering situation where they would say snow and it wouldn't come for 2 days. So he says, I'm going to get in the weathering business. And he's been in there for 49 years. He went to the University of Northern Iowa, and he's been inducted into the Broadcasting Hall of Fame. He did teach math and science in St. Agatha in Upper Arlington for a time. And so I wanted him to come and talk to us about weather, and he said, you know, World War II had some very interesting aspects respective to how the outcome came, and that's what he's going to talk to us about. Please welcome Jym Ganahl. Oh, just one other thing. He and I met because of a knee thing. He subsequently, I think you know, was in the hospital for a very serious heart condition here in December. You were what, for about 30 days in intensive care?
Yeah, dead for 2.5 minutes.
This is his first speaking engagement.
Since then, yeah. They won't let me do it. Yeah, they've been cutting down on my hours at work because of that. So this is the first time I've been allowed out to speak in quite a while. So thank you for having me here today. Yes, I started doing weather on TV when I was 17 years old. Back in Iowa, black and white TV. We didn't have radar. We didn't have satellites. You probably remember there were only 3 channels at that time. ABC, NBC, and CBS, and no cable. And so it was a very quiet existence. You just kind of went about your business doing the weather and then going on home. That has changed so much now with social media. Everybody has a phone. Everybody takes pictures of everything that's happening in weather. And everybody calls or contacts me. I think because news is so serious, nobody really talks to the anchors very much, but I get calls every day. And most of them don't have anything to do with weather at all. I made a list. This guy calls me from the west side, and he says, should I have my sump pump on? Well, I said, well, yeah, around here you need it with the clay soils, things like that. And I says, why don't you have it on now? And he said, the post office made me turn it off. I said, well, why would they do that? He said, well, there's a short in it. It shocks the mailman when he walks through the yard. Not much I can do about that. There's a guy who calls me every Tuesday. He's from Worthington. That's the day of the week he showers. Probably doesn't have a girlfriend. And the thing that bothers him the most is that he wants to know if there's any thunderstorms anywhere in the power grid that could knock the power out. It doesn't matter if it's sunny outside his door. He wants to know if there's any storms because he's afraid to dry himself off in the dark if the power goes out. I've had a guy who's called me every day for 10 years at 3:30 in the afternoon. If you don't pick up, he'll continue to call. He always wants to tell me what he's had for lunch. And every day it's coney dogs and bean soup, and I'm not kidding you. So I know what he's doing the other 23 hours. At 3:30, he's calling me. I have somebody call and say, hey, have you noticed that noodles stick to spoons better during tornadoes? No, I'm busy during that time. Stick noodles to spoons. Somebody says, raccoons are breaking into my trailer. What should I do? Well, geez, cover the hole. Really obvious answer there. Somebody called and said, how do I give oral medication to my pet rabbit? That's your area, not mine. I have no idea. I said, I only know how to give the suppositories. I don't know how to give the oral stuff. So, somebody calls and says, I had mashed potatoes for lunch. Is it okay to have mashed potatoes for dinner? So you can see there's no rhyme or reason to anything kidding. Every single day it's like this. Somebody called and said, I know why they shot Lee Harvey Oswald. And I said, well, I'm old enough, and many of you are too, that we saw that. It had a tremendous effect on us. But why did they shoot Lee Harvey Oswald? He said NASA did it. Yeah, that's my exact facial expression too. Why would NASA shoot Lee Harvey Oswald? They said they were silencing the competition because he was working on the space shuttle before they were. Your Central Ohioans are not that bright, are they? Somebody called and said I had 10 cups of coffee. So I was curious, why did you have 10 cups of coffee? He says, I'm trying to stay awake for Walker, Texas Ranger. Now that I understand. If you're a guy, the Three Stooges, Walker, Texas Ranger, you have to stay up for those. What's the driving weather to the Bahamas? Every year, when we go to daylight savings time, many of the government agencies don't. They stay at the same time. Have you ever heard the atomic clock? The atomic clock keeps perfect time. It's based out of Boulder, Colorado. Daylight savings time it doesn't advance forward. So somebody calls and says, there's something wrong with my atomic clock. It didn't advance for daylight savings time. And I said, well, what did you do? Thinking they would check the batteries. They said, well, I went out in the yard, I faced Colorado and held the clock over my head, but the radiation didn't change it. From the atomic clock. If radiation from Colorado moves your clock, we got a bigger problem. Somebody calls and says, well, how many days till the end of the month? Well, it was the 29th, so it's either 1 or 2. You could look that up, I would think, somewhere. This guy calls and says, can I put gravy on my sidewalk? Why? Why would you do that? He said, well, if I do that, the dog will go out, lick the gravy and the ice, and maybe get the ice off the sidewalk. Some lady calls and says, I think that Mayan calendar stuff is working. And I says, why would you say that? She said, it's raining worms. No, it's not. When it rains, they come up from the ground. From the sidewalk. How could you not notice that even one time in your life to this point? The Catholic Church is mad at me. This is why is the Catholic Church mad at you? And I said, they don't believe I can raise people from the dead. So you see why I'm always smiling when I'm doing weather. I'm smarter than the people that are watching. By far. I would never ask any of these questions. Somebody called and said that they'd lost 40 pounds, and they wanted to know if I'd ask Colleen Marshall if she'd buy a new wardrobe for them because they like Colleen's clothes. That's a little bit extreme for me. But also, because we have HD TV now, we get criticized an awful lot, too. For instance, I have been criticized. I put my own makeup on. If I've had makeup on a sideburn, somebody will call and complain. Amazing, isn't it? If Colleen has 2 earrings, if one is twisted a little bit, somebody will call and complain. If your shoes aren't polished, they'll call and complain. Let's see, Cabot is notorious for this. He gets food on his tie all the time, so they'll call and complain about that. And so you're fielding the complaint calls and the silly calls all day long. I almost never get a call asking me about the weather. And the other thing about HD TV, I don't have it on here now, if I've got one speck of dust, that's where your eye will go, and you'll watch that instead of the maps or me, and you'll focus on the speck of dust on the suit. It's really crazy how it works that way. It's almost subliminal. And so you have to make sure you have all the specks of dust off there as well, too. Other than that, let's see what else. I think that's mostly it. Oh, Cabot and Colleen, they read a teleprompter. There's only like 2 words on a line. I couldn't do that. I can ad-lib forever, but I could never read the teleprompter because with 2 words on a line, you don't know where the commas, the semicolons, and the periods come. Cabot Ray has started the newscast twice. Good evening, I'm Colleen Marshall. what happens to me all the time in weather. And I'm supposed to talk to you about World War II, so I want to get that. Do you have any questions before we get to the fun stuff about that or not? Nothing at all so far?
Do you forward those calls to a psychiatrist?
No, I take them all. And I take all the emails. I get about, maybe 500 to 750 emails a day. And so I do answer everything myself and answer all the phones too. I'm in the phone book as well. Because I just felt that, anybody wants to talk to me, they can talk to me at any time. So that's how that works. And it's turning out that way, too. Everybody's talking to me, but nothing about weather. So anyhow, I wanted to talk to you a little bit today, before we are done, about weather in World War II. None of you are old enough to have been in World War II. I'm sure of that, are you? But you probably had parents that were. Back in the start of World War II, 1939, the World Meteorological Association was based in Germany. So when the war started, they were familiar with the weather in the region, and they had access to 50,000 meteorologists to help them with forecasting. We only had 50 meteorologists by comparison in our military forces to start World War II. And we had no experiences at all in the North Atlantic. So I'm sure you've seen many, many times on the History Channel these huge vessels that Germany had, like the Bismarck, the great big battleship that they had out in the North Atlantic. So why didn't we ever sink them from the air? The reason was they had meteorologists on board with fog machines. And whenever scout planes would come over and find them, they'd fog in the ships and plant like fake trees on it so it would look like an island. And you could never bomb them because the only way a bomb would work against those ships had to be sub-water line level just below the surface. And you couldn't possibly be that accurate with a bomb if you couldn't even see the ships then. In World War II, Japan, they knew about the jet stream before we did. They were launching balloon bombs to the United States. 3 to 5 of them blew up, actually, in Washington and Oregon. But something very, very interesting happened then. The government and the media said nothing. And Japan thought it wasn't working, so they stopped doing it. Compare that to today. We'd have CNN, Fox, everybody right at the bomb crater showing them what they did. And to me, media almost is treasonous at times, in times of war, showing and revealing information that they shouldn't be doing. But Japan didn't continue the bombings because they didn't think they were working. But they actually were. And we learned about the jet stream during World War II when our bombers would fly to Japan to bomb them and then come back and have different usages of fuel on there. And we picked up the jet stream that way. But we didn't learn that it had a major factor in weather until the 1960s. When satellites came, we could actually see the jet streams on air. Admiral Halsby was court-martialed because he lost more ships in typhoons than the Japanese sunk. He took the fleet into 2 typhoons, but again, you couldn't see those in the Pacific Ocean. You didn't know where they were. We had no access to satellite or any information at all. But more ships were sunk by typhoons than by Japan. So how did we do this in World War II? See, I'm having trouble speaking a little bit. That's part of my heart problem, and that my mind can't focus on what I'm trying to say very easily. And so I'm scared when I go on the air every night that I'm not going to remember the weather. But it's getting a little bit better, and so we keep plugging away on it. So I apologize for that. But anyhow, Sverre Pedersen was from Norway, and he was a forecaster in the North Sea area. And he's the one that correctly predicted the weather for D-Day. If we would have gone on June the 5th, we would have lost many ships in the North Atlantic and maybe lost the war. He was the one that correctly predicted there would be window of opportunity for us to go on June the 6th. Many of the German officers were on leave because they thought the weather was going to be too bad, and obviously that worked to our advantage. There were 3 different weather service offices, Wide Wing, Dunstable, and Washington, D.C., trying to do this, but this one guy, Sverre Pedersen, was the best of all. He also correctly predicted the weather for the Anzio invasion, where you had to have winds and wind from the same direction for 4 straight days in order for that invasion to work. On the downside here, too, we were trying to fly over the hump from India and Thailand through China to get at Japan at the back. Some of those mountain ranges were highly charged, and we were flying planes directly into mountains because the magnetic compasses would go off on us. In one flight, 28 bombers from the United States crashed one right after another into the same mountain because it would give it false magnetic signals. So World War II has been very, very interesting all along, just to learn about all of this and the little things that happen with regard to weather. And so I find that very interesting. There's a lot of books on the subject, too. So do you have any questions you'd like to ask me at all before I let you go and try to refocus on getting the weather right for tonight? Yes.
How were you predicting the weather before the radars and all the technology?
Guessing it. We were watching what happened. No, not the same as today. We were looking at what was happening like in Omaha or Des Moines to the west of us, then figured that was going to come to us. But there were times we kept track of it. There was one time where I missed the forecast 12 days out of 30. That's pretty bad. That's why they shipped me out of Iowa and sent me here. Anything else at the moment? Yes, sir.
The meteorologist that you mentioned that predicted that window of opportunity for D-Day,
yes.
Was he British or American?
He was Norwegian.
Oh.
He was. And I was at one talk like this where I found out that one of the pilots that bombed the bridge over the River Kwai was there. And they actually bombed it from the air, not like in the movie. And they used bombers instead of fighters to bomb the bridge over the River Kwai. That guy was from Toledo, actually, that did that. So that was kind of cool. And I was talking in Newark one time, and there was one guy in the meeting with Spare Pedersen and General Eisenhower, too, at the same time. So these are kind of nice things to find out when you're out talking, too.
Good stuff.
Yes, sir.
Weather 5 years from today, forecasting. How will it unfold, do you think?
Well, we have 11-year cycles on the sun when there are sunspots on the sun. It goes up. When the sunspots are there, we get warmer. And when the sunspots are not there, we turn colder. And it goes in 11-year cycles. We've actually been tracking that for 400 years, and it's a perfect match. Up like this on the sunspots and like this on the temperatures here on Earth. So we're coming out of an active sunspot period, so we should be heading into a colder period again. And this usually works for 7 to 11 years.
And half our club just headed south.
Pardon?
You're going to drive half our club south with that guy.
Nah, they probably already go south. Yes. Well, I think we're all wrong on global warming. Number one, we've been in a warmer cycle. And in warm cycles, you can grow food to feed people. So we should have been happy that we were in a warmer spell, not cursing and taxing everybody over it. Because when the other alternative comes, it's much harder to grow food. And we can trace it back. The Vikings used to be in Greenland with dairy farms. But when the climate turned cold, they had to abandon them and head back to their home countries. The Aztecs, Incas, and Mayas were advanced civilization until the climate turned cold. They weren't able to feed the people, anarchy, and everybody fled the cities. In the Middle Ages, when we had the little ice age there, then you get the bubonic plague, and millions of people die, and they can't feed the people. So in every single occurrence, when we're in warm spells, we do better than we do cold spells. But you have everybody cursing the warm spell. And carbon dioxide, which we're trying to get rid of, is the food for plants that give off the oxygen we breathe. And it seems like so many of these politicians haven't had any biology courses at all. And they don't understand any of that. So yes, it is irritating. Anything else? else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, do you know why that bird keeps flying into that window over there?
What bird?
There's a bird over there.
Oh, is it a cardinal?
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
I don't know, I can't see it.
Yeah, it'd be a cardinal because it views that other bird as a challenge to his nesting area. Also, since you're talking about insects, count the number of chirps that you hear in 14 seconds and add 40, and that's the temperature Fahrenheit when you hear crickets. When you first hear cicadas come out this summer and they go, mark on your calendar 90 days from then, that's the first frost. And the last 2 years, it has come on September the 24th. We had folklore that said if you have thunder in February, you get frost in May on the same day. And so that would be the 20th of May. Although I think the frost usually occurs on the 13th, 14th, or 15th of May, and then you can plant your tomatoes. But it's going to be interesting to see if we have frost on the 20th, like folklore says we should. So yes.
Has the weather affected these stink bugs that are around town? Like, we used to have so many stink bugs. Is that anything to the weather or no?
I don't know anything about the stink bugs, though.
I was crazy when calling you about stink bugs.
A lot of bugs do migrate through just like birds do, and so that happens with the box elder bugs. It happens with ladybugs, and so I assume it probably happens with the stink bugs as well. They're migrating through at a certain time. Anything else? I guess you guys. It's 1 o'clock. Thank you for having me.
Jim, Rick, thank you so much, especially for making us your first speaking engagement success, and we're so glad that you're recovering well.
I need more practice, obviously.
That's okay. In recognition of today, we're going to donate a book in your name and to one of the schools of which some of our members do tutoring.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much.
again.
Thank you.